So my name is Jen Medway. I'm a 5th generation farmer from here at Gunning, so in the Southern Tablelands.
I'm Jack Medway, 5th generation farmer from Gunning. I've been farming pretty much all my life since I left school alongside my father, recently alongside my father-in-law and my wonderful wife Jen.
We also have 3 kids, so we've got Lockie, who is 17, a 15-year-old Tully, and then our youngest has just started at boarding school as well in Year 7, and that's Zoe.
We're about 12 kilometres out of Gunning. I originally had another family farm with my father, which is half an hour away.
We have got about 4,500 acres here, and my parents have got about another 3,000 acres there. And essentially, we are really lucky. We've got pretty high rainfall.
Have a flock size of 10,000 sheep, join about 5,500 to 6,000 ewes. Balance is made up of weaners and wethers. The country is predominantly granite country, and we do have some nice basalt hills.
We're all merino, but we do have about 30% of our lambs that we put across to crossbred, so that's Border Leicester. We have about 5,500 lambs a year. About 3,500 of those goes down to the merino-based operation, maybe between 1,500 and 2,000 to the crossbred operation.
Pastures are probably 50% of native pastures, and we do have some improved pastures of subclovers and phalaris, and there are a few paddocks with some ryegrass as well. Don't really do any cropping, have put in a grazing crop a couple of times, but I would rather just run with the improved pastures.
So I do all the business side, and Jack is definitely the outdoor man, but there are times where it gets a bit busy, so I will definitely be able to jump in, and usually around drenching or shearing times.
The livestock spraying, weed control, animal husbandry, that's where expertise, I suppose you'd say.
We generally make every decision together, even production decisions. I do all the work in terms of the business side, and I do all the marketing on the wool side. So I work with all the suppliers and our wool agents in terms of some of the sales stuff. I do love when some of the agents ring Jack and he's like, "Why are you ringing me? Please ring Jen." I do all that sort of sales side on the wool. Jack does the livestock side. He'll ask me about drenches, and we'll talk about whether we're doing this then, or if we've got a lice year or whatever we might have. Some of those decisions we definitely make together. I grew up there were 3 sisters, so and I tended to be the person that followed my dad around since I was literally could walk, and so I did learn all the farm stuff, always doing all the farm work. But of course, then I went off and did all National Farmers Federation and worked off farm. We started with 200 acres. We bought my parents 185 acres actually, which was the house and a little bit of land around it. We then have, over a very random period of time, about 20 years, have bought and put about 4,500 acres on this block. When we first started, land was I think $1,400 an acre, and I think now we're pushing $6,000 an acre. As we've grown, we're certainly benefiting, I guess, in terms of having that access to equity, but certainly now it's getting really tricky, I guess, in terms of managing the amount of cost of the land with the productive value. Being 2 hours from almost everywhere has its drawbacks, but also its benefits. It's been a real journey in the last 20 years or so. While we're trying to grow and get the best sheep we can, it's come at a time when we also need to keep and hold sheep, so we haven't been culling as heavily as we would like to. It's come at a time when we bought sheep up from another property and they've performed really differently when they've got here. For us, we also then kind of, in the frame of then not having, trying to employ anyone, we actually just went through a whole system, the whole operation, to look for efficiency. So for instance, there's lanes all through the place. So we've got 4 sets of yards, and every set of yards has a lane system to it. We just do a lot of work, a lot of technology we use to try and sort of manage that that efficiency. So we really worked, it's a system that's probably cost a tiny bit more in terms of the labour side of it, but it actually really works for our business. Just making sure we're really efficient on the time side so we can kind of cut that labour unit out, but equally work really closely with our contractors that, we treat them like family. They are really amazing people that come in and help our business out. In terms of our crosses, as I mentioned, they get turned off at about 3-month mark. There's usually around about between 15 and 2,000 is what we sort of aim for in there for most years. On the merino side, we sell off our weaners, wethers, so we do keep some and send them down to our weather block down at Bevendale, but usually we've got too many, so we sell usually about 1,000 weaners a year, weather weaners, and they just go into the livestock market, the sale yards at Yass or wherever. And then in terms of our older sheep, so we sell our wethers at around about that sort of 5-year mark because we've got the turnover down with the lease block, so they probably go a little bit earlier than the ewes. The older ewes go off into our crossbred operation and they basically just go off to the sale yards, usually to Yass, and our crosses can go to either Yass or down to Wagga. 60% of our income still comes from the wool side. Of course, that depends on the wool prices of the year.
I'd like to get our sheep to cutting around 5 kilos of wool, if we can, around that 17.5 micron.
We've got the 3 breeding values, so we've got the wool cut is the top one, fertility, so we do a bit of work in the fertility side, and then the third one is, as I mentioned, the body weight, so we can have that animal ready to go in the end of its life.
I don't want the carcass to be too big, I don't want them to be too heavy because that way you'll find they're eating too much grass, so if I could get them around that 60-65 kilos live weight.
We don't necessarily always feedlot here. We sort of opportunistically do that a little bit. We do have some infrastructure set up for that. We'd like to certainly do a little bit more in that space. And we do supplementary feed a fair bit and certainly blocks and things like that to try and make sure they've got the right minerals, because we certainly find that through some testing and stuff we've done and some trials, we certainly find that at certain points of the year it's really important that they make sure they have that enough minerals going into them as well.
We started using eID tags around 9-10 years ago in a transitional stage from being a super fine wool grower to wanting to get to a dual purposey type sheep. We wanted to fast track that by using eIDs and collecting data. I don't collect the data, that's Jen's job. Technology and I don't work well together, if at all.
I have an economics degree, so I'm probably already weighted towards liking numbers, which not everybody is. And also I've done a lot in ag tech, so I work very closely with your MLAs. I've done some work with SproutX, Cicada Innovations. eID was around, but not many people were using it. And we didn't really know where to go to sort of ask some of those questions. We brought our stock up from Bevendale, one of our other properties. That was running from 1 sheep to the acre country, and we brought them up to 3 sheep to the acre country, and every bad trait you can imagine came out in those animals. Basically, we were looking at which animals were putting on most weight and would we pick those animals, and the answer was no. We would not. If we were drafting off which ones were our best performers, half of them wouldn't have made the top cut. So it really, I guess, also started our thinking of moving from mob management to individual management. We started out and did the thing that everyone does wrong and tried to capture everything, which was expensive. It was a complete waste of our time, and we worked out that actually we weren't using the data that we were getting, so we were just wasting our time, wasting money. We sort of sat down one time and I was like, this is a lot, Jack, we're just not getting where we need to get to. And we worked out there was only a few things that we needed to do. One was to do some side sampling or getting some wool tests. That gave us micron and it gave us fleece weight, and that was a kicker. That's all we needed though from the wool. On the other side we were doing body weight, and then essentially with the fertility, There was nothing to sort of go, capture data on which ones were, twinners, which one was singles, and obviously the ones that were dry, and they would leave the property anyway. How to actually capture the data, store it, use it, was something that we wasted again, like years on. So we say we've done 9 years of data, but probably 3 or 4 of those were a complete waste of our energy and time because we actually couldn't capture that. But then it all kind of clicked. So we got a system called Breed Elite. The system works because the computer, the system, the technology, the data capture inside the shed, also down in the yards in terms of the auto drafters and the weigh systems, were all from the one system, so it was all interoperable. It was a game changer because suddenly not only did we have someone on the other end that could help us because nobody else sort of knew the system and knew what we were trying to achieve, but it really meant that we could capture the data and then we could use it in the same system. We go through the RAM Power system, plug the data in, we get an index, we do body weight, we do fleece, we do all the sort of wool metrics that we get through the Riverina Wool Test Guys and the system that comes, or the data that comes from there. And we literally get a list of our most productive animals from 1 to 2,000. When we know which is the most productive, we can trace their metrics, so we know exactly where they're sitting from a productive standpoint. But on the flip side, in a drought, we know where, at any stage, we can hive off our bottom 20% and get rid of those. It costs us about $30,000 in probably all up. So that's the handler, the laptops, the weighing systems, all that kind of things. My advice would be to sort of start smaller and kind of build rather than thinking you need the whole system early on. That would be one thing. You don't need every data point to achieve the change that you're after. We were very specific about what we were trying to change and then what data we needed to collect. So the top things that I think for our business is fleece weight. Fleece weight is the one thing that if we're looking particularly for a wool focused business, it's fleece weight is our number one. So from the meat side, it's definitely body weight for us. So we don't track the early growth rates like we did. We did a trial for that with LLS, but essentially just knowing what those body weights are so we can get that indexing is really critical. So we really want that number from literally 1 to 2,000. So in terms of knowing from that drought side, but also from the productive side, we need to know where those top producers are. And the system actually then helps you. You can draft off by trait, whatever it is, but getting that whole data, which includes the body weight, is really important. In terms of the cost, the return on investment, it's very early on, we were tracking about half a kilo of wool increase from year on year, which was really great. We went from about 4.5 kilos to some years 5.5, 6 average, which was just incredible numbers. We really did see huge wool gains very early on when we started, and we were able to track that. We've got very clear on our breeding objectives. We might put our lower wool cutters with one of our bigger heavy cutter rams, for instance. So because we've got the data, we can actually be able to track that. So we're trying to basically lift the average up. Certainly for us, it's been a game changer in terms of our productive increases that we're trying to chase. So the biggest couple of challenges that we have faced over the last couple of years particularly, well, originally it was access to people that could help us. So I think that's actually changing though. There are a fair few people now in the system and we've got some really helpful people that we definitely lean on. The cost, it's still costly. So obviously money comes and goes in farming and certainly we'd like to continue to build some of the things that we want to do with the data. From a flip side of the challenge, we actually have a fair few opportunities that we probably haven't had in probably the last couple of years even, that we didn't have sort of 5 or 6 years ago. It's nice to know that. It gives us a lot of confidence to know that if we do have to reduce mob sizes or think about drought lotting, that we can identify you may as well feed or not sell some of your better performers. That's been really important for us, even from a confidence perspective, given the dry times that we've seen in the past, but also probably what's coming. We do a visual cull first and knock out sort of maybe 5 to 8% on just on a visual cull, and then the rest of that is done definitely by data. So you might be picking, for instance, for us it might be anything sort of over 19 micron, or depending on what the market looks like in that time. If data isn't your thing, it can be really overwhelming. So I would seek help and get someone else to do that bit, because if you can't work the data out, you can't get the answers at the other end. In terms of getting really detailed with that sort of data, getting the lambs down to per head, per kilo, per whatever, absolutely the system will do that. Again, you've got to go back to what you're trying to achieve though. If you want that information, absolutely the data and the system will spit that out at you. That's not our bent. So we want to know how much wool we're producing and what that looks like and what some of the changes that we've made. If I had to go back and implement something again, it would definitely be to bring others that we work with back into our business and share that data so they can understand what we're trying to achieve and then work out how they can help us achieve that. My top 3 tips if someone was interested in getting into the data.
Firstly, don't be scared of it. It has lots of benefits. You will find out some of them the hard way. It's just great knowing exactly what your sheep are doing production-wise on farm. There's just lots of things we can do. You can add into your data, or whether they're twinners or singles if you're scanning at pregnancy. In tough times, we have the ability now to go through, run all our ewes through the auto drafter, and we can take off anything that's just aren't our good performers and get rid of them, so you're not feeding sheep that aren't going to pay you back.
Secondly is to figure out exactly what data points that you need to actually capture that and to make that change, and it's not everything, it's very specific. And then the third thing is don't overinvest. We probably overinvested a bit early, so make sure you're very clear in terms of what actual technology or information you need to capture, and then work out what you need to invest to achieve that.
What's next for Hillcrest?
So it'll be interesting to see if our son comes back and maybe our daughter as well. So we've told them that they would hopefully go and do a trade or do something else before they come back, so that'll be interesting.
Trying to hit our goals and our targets as quickly as we can.
About 50% of our pasture is still native, so looking to do a little bit more in terms of pasture improvement.
Really hit our production lines and goals that we want to.
But we do think there's an opportunity within our business to look at how we might be able to be more productive and I guess with that profitable. So there's some low-hanging fruit, I think, there, particularly around some of our genetics to keep improving on that side.
Plenty more improvement in Hillcrest to come, so hopefully we can see that happening in the next 5 or 6 years.